This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate MarriageCast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Welcome to episode 2. This is Ryan and Michelle, and it's so great to have you joining us on our episode today.
Yeah, episode 2.
Here we go.
It's
been fun so far.
So far, so good. So today we want to talk about, really, this is kind of, I would say, about a 2-part episode. We really want to dig into 2 really major dangers, red flags to watch out for in your marriage. These are things that we've seen in our marriage, we've seen in other marriages, and so we want to dig in. This is going to be personal. We want to dig into that. We understand that there may be other red flags or other issues that come up in marriage, but we really think that they kind of fall into these 2 categories. So we're gonna dive in. But first, Michelle, I wanna have you picture something here.
Yeah.
Close your eyes. I want to have you picture that if you're driving, don't close your eyes. But
good disclaimer.
Yeah, I just want you to picture, Michelle, that you and I are going to the beach.
Okay. That sounds nice.
It's a nice summer day. We're going to the beach, and you decided that, hey, Ryan, I don't want to go in the water today. I'm going to sit on the shore. Like, okay, cool. Well, man, I brought my big Swan inner tube thing that I'm gonna just chill in. I got my favorite drink, got my suntan lotion on, I got my music on, my headset on, and I'm just ready.
That sounds great.
I'm ready. Okay. So just picture this. I'm in my inner tube out in the water.
Yep,
you're on the beach. And man, just hours go by. I've got my music playing, my summer soundtrack's going. Hours go by. Finally, my phone dies, and the music stops.
It's a bummer.
Yeah. But I look up. I don't know where I'm at. The water took me somewhere that I don't have a clue where I am. That's what we want to talk about today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great analogy. I've had that happen before, actually.
Yeah?
When I was in high school, we took a youth group trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We were like shingling some houses, and we went to the ocean for a day. And it was kind of like you said, we were out in the water, and it was so much fun. First time in the ocean, I had forgotten to put on sunscreen, so not like your story. I actually got a really, really worst burn in my life. And we were in the water for hours, just like playing in the waves. We weren't on tubes. I think we had like boogie boards or something like that. And I do distinctly remember when we got out of the water that day, we were like, oh my gosh, where is our stuff? Like what happened to it? Did we lose it? Like what in the world happened? And we walked, I bet it was a good couple blocks to get back to our beach towels. And what we realized is that in that playing in the water, in that like just fun that we were having, we had lost sight of our spot and hadn't realized that when we were like splashing the waves, we had drifted several blocks, like city blocks, in the ocean that day.
Yeah.
And it was so distinct. And so it was kind of shocking when we got out to be like, oh my gosh, how did we get so far away?
Yeah. And that's the topic we want to discuss today, is this topic of drift. And it happens so often in marriages. It happens in our own marriage, but we don't work together. We work in different places. Mm-hmm. We go our own different ways. Starting in the morning, we're doing our own thing. And I think so often we see this in marriages, of just this idea of drift. Mm-hmm. You start off somewhere, you know where you are, you know what you want, but you don't pay attention and you drift.
You hear people say that too. Like, we just drifted apart.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're just different people. We drifted.
Yeah. So we're gonna dive into that today.
Yeah, sounds good.
And talk about this. There's a scripture that I wanted to reference that I thought was really good. It's Hebrews 2:1. So we must listen very carefully to the truth we have heard, or we may drift from it. And that's what we want to dig in today. So maybe, Michelle, just to start, what what are some different times that you've noticed drift, just in marriages, maybe in our marriage, but just in general? What are some ways that we can identify this drift or see when it starts to happen?
Yeah, actually, so I've seen a lot about that, and I jotted some things down, and I think that where we've seen this happen is maybe, and I'll get to ourselves too, but in other relationships, I feel like typically when people have their own hobbies, and that's totally fine. Like, I think that's totally cool to have your own hobbies, but where those kind of take over, whether it's the husband gaming and, doing whatever sports all the time, or, maybe they're like in a band or whatever that is. And the wife is maybe, going out ladies' night or book studies, or, seemingly at the surface level, they're all good things, right? Like, it's great to use your musical abilities. It's great to be a part of these different things, but they almost start to form their own like lives or identities in that, and they don't come back and connect. And I think that one caution that I've seen in that is sometimes in those spheres, they're not actually really healthy spheres either. So not only are they not spending time together, but there's gossip going on, there's negativity, and there's like, it's actually like a spouse bashing type thing. And, that type of thing. And it's not often that I hear that. And maybe I think it's just because people know, like, I won't tolerate that at all. But, certain occasions where it's like, you're around a group and you're like, oh my gosh, this is breaking my heart to hear. So I think that's definitely a type of drift where they're in different spheres and they're not coming back together. And I think for us personally, it's been when we don't connect at the end of the day. So like, we run our own ways, and I'm probably more guilty than you of this, but we like usually it's business type things. So we are not employees of the podcast. We're not employees of the church. We both have day jobs. My day job sometimes kind of bleeds into the night. I have, health and wellness business, and sometimes there are classes and stuff like that. So, but I think when we don't connect, whether it's verbally, physically, or just in some way, it really can like create that slippery slope of that drift. Yeah. And what's interesting, Ryan, is we had this block party a couple of weeks back. It was the end of the summer, so a while back now. But we were sitting there, we hosted it. We love to gather people. We love to have community. And we're like, let's just meet all of our neighbors. And we're sitting there with our burgers and, our salads and all that stuff. And I had no clue. These neighbors have lived next to us for years. I was talking to her and I was like, what do you do? And she was like, well, I'm actually a marriage and family therapist. And I was like, really? I'm like, well, she has our food. She's a pretty captive audience. So I'm going to just pick her brain. And I was like, what would you say the top couple of issues are that you see in married couples? I'm just curious. Yeah. And she said, the first one is conflict resolve. Couples knowing how to fight fair and come back together and have that healthy resolve. And to that, I would say, if you missed last week's 5-Minute Friday, go back and check that out. Short and sweet. And we give you a really great principle for being on the same team and having healthy conflict resolve. But the second thing she said was intimacy. And I just said, okay, that's, like physical intimacy. And she said, actually, not just that. It's more so about verbal and like letting your spouse into your life. Yeah. And I think of when Pastor Keith says, he's our, our founding senior pastor here at Celebrate Church. He says, intimacy is into me you see. Intimacy, into me you see. Yeah. And so I asked her, I said, well, give me an example of this. And she said, well, it's like if a spouse were to come home at night and maybe they had something pretty big happen during their day. Maybe it was something at work and, maybe they made a mistake. And they come home and their spouse is like, how was your day? And they're like, oh, it was fine. They're missing an opportunity to really bind and solidify and let their spouse in. Now, I'm not saying that they need to say like the details of what happened, but they could say, you know what, I made a mistake. Maybe it's like, I was supposed to order 20 widgets and I accidentally ordered 20,000 or, whatever. Yeah. But they could just say, hey, I made a mistake and it's really causing me a lot of stress. And, but in that moment, that spouse has a chance to really be there for the other, and that intimacy, the one spouse is being vulnerable, or maybe it's something that it could be anything, right? It could be something that happens with a friend, or it could be just how you're feeling. Like, right. I'm feeling inadequate in this season, and I know God's equipped me. I know I'm here for a reason, but I can't help but feel inadequate in this situation. And when you do that, you give your spouse the opportunity to be really intimate with you. Right. Because when we do this, and now our big thing is like, sometimes they'll say a feeling like, I feel like a failure. And Ryan will be like, well, you're not a failure because of X, Y, and Z. And you'll present all the evidence right. and why, and you'll be your fixer self, and you'll come in and fix it. And I appreciate that. But you've gotten really good at being like, well, let's talk about why you feel that way. Like, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Right. Because even though that's not truth, the feeling I have is real. Right. But those are moments of intimacy where you're able to now connect with me. And instead of us just sweeping under the carpet what happened during the day and that drift widening, we're actually really coming together in a nice, like, really intimate way.
Yeah. I think it's a great point, because I think I tend to be the, oh, it was good.
Yeah.
And move on.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so I mean, it's such a great point of if I don't let you into my day, if I don't let you into this whole time that I was away, most of
our waking hours,
most of the time, and I just tell you it was good. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of my day that drift can happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm not letting you in, that intimacy. I'm not letting you in. And that's when drift happens.
Yeah.
And even if it's insignificant, it might be, but when you listen to me,
yep.
and when that happens, you help stop that drift from happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I feel like and maybe, the parents out there, we hadn't talked about this, but it kind of popped in my head just right now, but parents out there probably feel that way too, right? You get your kids, around the dinner table, and you're like, how's your day? Good, it's fine. And you're like, oh my gosh, but that same thing can happen with our spouses.
Right.
What about sharing our high-low high tool?
Yeah.
So we have this thing at the O'Connor house, and it's high-low high, and it's kind of like, if you ever give someone like a criticism, you call it like a peanut butter jelly sandwich, you just squish the negative in between two positives. There you have your little fluffy little sandwich. Well, it's kind of like that. So you go around, you do high-low high. I've done this in leadership settings before. I've done this when I've led a team, different organizations, and it's been really impactful, because basically what you do is you go around and you say, okay, we're gonna do high-low high, and you share one high highlight of your day, one low moment, one highlight. And basically what that does is, it allows people to kind of show off, brag a little, share the fun things that happen, but it also gets you vulnerable, because you have to share one low thing. And I think, when we did this with our, 8-year-old, he was really young then, he was like, my whole day was awesome. And we're like, that's great, buddy. Like, you don't have to have a low.
Right.
And some days are like, I didn't have a low today. Like, it was a really solid day. But giving the space to at least speak that can provide a good safe spot. And it has to be a safe spot too. You have to have a culture of being receptive to that and not jumping down their throat and be like, oh, I can't believe, that, but a safe spot to share that. So high-low high.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think just to add to that, like it's really, I think anything that is coming between you and your spouse, and I'm not saying you can't have hobbies, but I like to golf, but like, I know guys that are in like 4 golf leagues. Like, holy cow. Like, that's a lot, right? Like, if there's something coming between you and your spouse, connecting, drift happens.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. And whether that's a hobby, whether that's work, whatever it can be, if you find yourself spending more time on the golf course than with your spouse, drift is going to happen.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that we talked about, another form of drift that we should touch on too, is conflict resolve. So going back to the family therapist that we met at the block party, I think that can actually apply in this situation too, right? So both the physical drift, but also the almost emotional drift too, and being quick to resolve conflict. And I think we have said that before, where it's like, we have an argument, and in that moment, not that you have to repair it right away. Some people need time to think and kind of, figure out the approach to come back and resolve, but do it by the end of the day. I mean, don't let that grow a wedge in your relationship where you become calloused or indifferent to it. So I think the times where we've had arguments and we haven't been quick to repair it that same day, it does feel like it drives a little bit of a wedge. And we've gotten to a point where it's just nope, close that gap, close it up. Never go to bed angry, don't let the sun go down, in your anger, resolve that. And that's another way to bring that, that intimacy back too.
Yeah.
Intimacy.
Yeah. I think that's so important. Mm-hmm. It's so important to do that because if you don't, it will just grow.
Yeah.
And it could be something very small that maybe is an annoyance of you don't load the dishwasher right.
Right.
I mean, I'm just using a silly example, but multiply that by 10 years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this little thing turns into this big, huge frustration that could have been solved in 30 seconds in a moment of time.
Right. You do a fine job, love.
Thanks.
It's just that one green bowl that kept making the bottom rack that needed to be on the top.
It's true. It's true.
I feel like we've gotten that iron out, though.
Yeah.
Look at that.
We got it figured out.
So,
10 years has it gone by of
that's right.
The green bowl.
That's right. I'm not calloused about it.
Right.
Yeah. I love that bowl.
Yeah. So the key to really stopping this drift, and I use this analogy of just when you're on the water, is to look up. Now, I mean, that can be applied a lot of different ways, figuratively, metaphorically, but I'm just using the example of we're on the beach, right? To look up, to look at your spouse, to realize that, hey, we've been apart, drift has happened, and to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's so important to actually physically look up, reconnect, come back together. Because just going back to that first analogy, if you don't, you're not going to know where you are.
Yeah.
You're not going to like where you end up.
Yeah. Ryan, what does this look like for you practically? How do you stop the drift in our marriage? What are some practical tips for people?
Yeah, I think I have a couple that I've implemented that just they're so small, but
what do you
helps.
do?
So the first thing that I've done is I set an alarm for 10 a.m. and 2 p.m.
Okay.
That if I haven't messaged you, I haven't talked to you, I haven't connected with you, that I will send you a quick message.
You have an alarm set?
Yes, I have two of them. Yes.
I didn't know that. That's cool. That's awesome.
Again, it's 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But we're apart.
Yeah.
And it's just a simple message. Hey, I hope you're having a great day.
Mm-hmm.
Love you. Something simple as that to know, hey, we're apart.
Right.
But I'm going to send you a message that, hey, I'm thinking about you.
Which, isn't it interesting that when you're dating, you do that all the time?
Yeah.
You have to schedule an alarm for it, but then you just get into this comfortable married life. I love that you have an alarm set to do that, because the day gets so busy.
Absolutely.
And I love to work, so I'll just put my head down and go. Thank you, love.
And I think that's the analogy of oh man, I'm gone for 8 hours here, 9 hours, and if I don't look up and look,
right,
and just send you a quick message. Again, it's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy.
That's good.
But it'll help stop that drift.
That's great,
happening.
Ryan.
So the other thing that has been a little bit of a challenge for me, but it's been really great, is we have calendar meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a great calendar keeper.
Oh, yeah. You don't like those meetings.
No, I don't at all. But what it has done is it's helped me to know our week.
Yeah.
So that I know if Tuesday is going to be an absolute crazy day.
Right.
And we're running, I can pay more attention because I know that day there's a possibility that we're going to have some drift in our day.
Sure.
That I can be just proactive in that. I can be aware of what's happening. As much as I don't like calendars.
Yeah.
It's such a big help. because I also know what's going on in your day.
Yeah.
And so, just like a couple weeks ago, I knew that you had such a busy day. You had a couple really huge presentations for your business.
Yep.
Really big. So knowing that, all that I did is I wrote you a simple card.
Yeah.
Saying, I believe in you. I'm proud of you. Good luck in your presentations.
Yeah. 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 And that meant a lot.
Right.
A lot. That was huge.
Yeah. But knowing your schedule of it's going to help keep some of that drift from happening because you know what's coming.
Yeah.
And so then you can be proactive and you can actually do something about it and to help eliminate it or help slow it or stop it, at least a little bit.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So how about you, Michelle?
I think a little bit similar on the text message with the being intentional. So our anniversary date is November 11th of 2011. So 11/11/11. So a long time ago, we just started noticing that we observed the clock when it was like 11:11. Like it always happened. Like, there it is again, there it is again. So we started texting each other and now our kids are in on it. So like if it's during the summer and our kids are home, like our little guy will be like, Mom, you have 2 minutes. I'm like, 2 minutes until what? And he's like, 2 minutes, text dad. But I'll just say like XO, like love you, or, like the kiss emoji or whatever. But like, that's just like my little check-in for the day to let you know, like, hey, I'm thinking about you. And then usually we'll be like, hey, love you too, love, or thanks so much. And it'll just be really short, but it's a way of like checking in with your spouse. So that could be either, and now our son has determined that 3:23 is his minute. That was his birthday is March 23rd. So, I mean, it could be anything. It could be if your anniversary date is, later on in the day or something, or not conducive. If it's like February and you're not going to be texting at 2 a.m. or whatever, I guess you could do 2 p.m.
Right.
But whatever that date is, or maybe it's a birthday, or just figure out a time of the day that you're able to like just make a fun thing out of. We also do all of our meals, our dinner meals together. We have really busy schedules, but we are always able to. Somehow it's crazy. We usually just find a way to make it work. Now, tonight, our daughter is, oh my gosh, where is she even at? She's working. And she's coaching a volleyball team. And then, so tonight is an exception. Right. She's like, so what should I do for dinner? And I was like, you probably might just want to stop somewhere and just make sure you're fed. But I would say 95% of the time, we are eating dinner together as a family and having that communication. And then, we pray together as a couple before bed every night. And that's just a great, really honest and vulnerable way to like pray for my spouse. And then we have life group every other week. That's a great way to connect. And then, I would say one of the most fun things right now is our joint hobby, which, it doesn't have to be a hobby, like a sport. It could be anything, but we play in an adult soccer league together. I think we talked about it last week, but that is so much fun to play on that team with you. And then I would just say like closing the gap intimately too, just being aware of like how long it's been and knowing that, like I want to be able to meet your needs. And I'm just aware of that. Early on, I think it was like a marriage seminar early on, I'd heard, like, how many days, like, needs, guys have needs. And I'm like, I appreciate that in our marriage that you have kept yourself. Well, we are just going for this in this moment. You didn't know that you've kept yourself pure. You abstain from looking at things like pornography. And I want to be able to help provide for you and like close that gap. So one way that I do feel that it's important that we stay on the same page is just like even connecting intimately, making sure that we don't drift in that way, that gap is closed, because that's important to me. It's important to you. And I want to respect the commitment you've made to our marriage and, meet those needs too. So I would just say finding the moments throughout the day, praying together can be a super great way to close the gap. Like you really can't be mad or angry or calloused and pray for your spouse. It's just, I don't think it's possible. Having meals together, having a hobby, and then connecting intimately would be my ideas.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have a fun 5-Minute Friday coming up for them this week too. I think we're going to give some specific ideas.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we want to just close like this idea of drift is so real. And it's sad because we see it happen so often.
Yeah. You know what's really interesting? I was thinking back to the start of the show and you said we're going to talk about red flags. You know what's interesting with our beach analogy is I think isn't the red flag like the danger flag they put out?
Oh, yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah,
but
no, I think you're right.
like serious danger. So
Yeah. And it's something that honestly happens every day. It honestly will happen every day because we're apart, right? We have different things going on. And it's just, it happens every single day. And if you don't address it, if you don't realize it, that gap will just widen.
Yeah.
And will continue to widen and widen until you're down the road. And you know, I think that's part of what we see is that couples don't even know. They don't even know who the other person is anymore.
Yeah.
Because they've been so busy doing their own thing.
Yep.
That they've not looked up.
Yeah.
They've not seen how far they've moved.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that would just be really our advice, our call to action is to look up, to address it as soon as you possibly can, daily. You know, we talked about this in episode 1. Good marriages don't just happen.
Right.
It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of active participation, and that's daily.
Yeah, it's worth it though.
Absolutely.
It's so worth it.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, tune in for 5 Minute Friday and we will be going over those practical tips. But this has been episode 2 of the Celebrate MarriageCast. We are Ryan and Michelle, and thank you so much for joining us today.